So I wake up this morning and I'm just kind of thinking, and this happens frequently, thinking about, once again, our country, the Congress, how it's just sickening nowadays what these people do, the laws they pass, the regulations they remove, and they just give it a title of, the whatever, the Financial Regulations Updating Act. And then you look at what it does, and it actually deregulates critical pieces of regulation. Such as what our Congress, our House, just passed on the 30th of October. I did a video about it. I emailed my local congressman to ask him why you would do such a thing. And, not in those words. I try to be very nice about it, so I can get a response back. And maybe there's something I didn't read or understand of why this was important to pass. But from what I do understand, this is what it removes that the Dodd-Frank Act put in place. So I'm just trying to figure out why it was necessary to pass this. Of course, I have not, to date, 3 weeks later, received even a auto reply from that congressman. But as I'm waking up this morning, I thought about that for a minute. Thought about everything else, how this story could be the same for pretty much every police department, sheriff's department in the entire United States, for the most part. And that is, most departments are always needing officers. Now, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, for example, where I live, that might not be the case when there's only like 2 or 3 deputies for the whole county or something. And I mean way out there, where there's not a whole lot of people anyways, which would make sense. I'm talking about your average city, even a small city that's got a decent sized police department, that's got stuff to do. Actually, I'm going to switch hands here. So the thing that they always face is there's not enough people, or not enough police officers. That's the problem. And the same can be said about the sheriff's office that I volunteer for. I already know this for a fact. It's just the way it is in most police departments. They always need more police. And I was actually talking with the deputy a while back and asked him, why is that always the case? Like, when I come in and I volunteer and stuff, and I see new faces, so I know you guys are getting new recruits, if I'm constantly seeing new recruits, how are you always needing people? I'm just curious. He said, well, we're always needing people because a lot of it, this is what he told me, by the way. I didn't say this to him. He says, a lot of it is these young kids, they get out of high school, go to college, they get their, get a college degree in something. Now they've got this debt that they got to pay back, and they can't get a job in the field that they went to college for. So they can't pay the debt back yet. So they're not going to go work for something, McDonald's or something. So a decent place to work for is a sheriff's office or a police department. In this case, the sheriff's office. And the reason being is because sure, it could pay better, but it sure as hell pays, far better than fast food or anything like that. I mean, not even close. Can you compare them? Plus, you could say it's a noble job. You go out there, you're serving the public. Again, I know there's some bad police officers out there, but generally speaking, the whole concept behind all of it is, it's a pretty good job to have. You're serving the public, that kind of thing. And they get these jobs, work at the police department, or in this case, the sheriff's office, and then they finally, year, 2 years later, 3 years later, however long it takes them, to finally land the job that they really wanted. And the sheriff's office here, anyways, requires that you have a college degree in order to be a sheriff's deputy. Any college degree. And if it's only your 2-year, I think the highest ranking you can get, I believe, is sergeant. If you have a 4-year degree, you can go higher, a lot higher than that, pretty much as high as the ranking system goes. But that might be part of the problem, that they're only allowing college-educated people to become police officers or sheriff's deputies. Now, they have another program there, whereas if you become a reserve deputy, which means you volunteer entirely to be a deputy. They will send you to the same training in the same academy with slightly less hours than a full-time deputy would have normally gotten. And you, as long as you put in 2 years of your service, you can then become a full-time deputy and get paid if you want to go that route. But again, no one's doing that for that reason. The reason they're doing it is because they want a freaking job that pays decent. The sheriff's office does pay, you know, decent. I'm not gonna say it pays really well, but it pays decent. But they're leaving to go find another job when they finally get another job, leaving the sheriff's office behind, put in their notice. Now they're down a deputy or 2 or 3. Now we got to get new recruits. So they're just constantly chasing deputies to stay. So as I woke up this morning, I'm thinking, what could solve all these problems? That's one problem. Same could be said with the fire department. Might need, you could use more fire department personnel. You personally, boy, would it be good to not have to pay for a driver's license renewal fee. Would it be good to not have to pay property taxes? Would it be good not to have to pay for a hunting license, a fishing license? All these fees and licenses and taxes. Because the same police department, an example I just gave you, any of them have the same problem. They have a tax revenue that they get from the local taxpayers. So even if, let's just say, for example, the sheriff's office here got all of the personnel it needed, it was not behind, it was exactly where it needed to be. That's a whole lot of more people they got to pay for. Whole lot of more police cars, whole lot of more equipment in the police cars, you name it, gas out of control. You know, gasoline. So then where's that extra revenue going to come from anyways? So the same problems we have personally, our local government has as far as finding money to pay bills. Same problem the state has finding money to pay its bills, and it just trickles down. So it seems like the federal government's the only one who has the printing press who can pay its bills by printing more money and putting us more in debt. And the more in debt we get, boy, it's nice that the federal government can just pay its bills like that, but the rest of us can't. But at the same time, they're tapping off of us as a tax base in order to pay those bills. So they're getting us more in debt, putting you and I more in debt. Then we have to pay higher taxes, higher fees, higher everything in order to pay back that debt, and we're not even paying it back to begin with. It's just growing and growing and growing. So my solution, which has always been the same, I've talked about this before, it's the same thing that you'll find on the Money Masters, the same thing you'll find on The Secret of Oz. The same guy did that video, the documentary. It's a really good, very informative documentary. It fixes our entire financial system at the drop of a hat, instantly. And a basic principle is very basic. It's so basic, it's unbelievable that we've never done this. And although we actually did kind of a few times, couple times, the president in power who did it was assassinated, and then that whole change went back to the way it was, which is like it is now, where we borrow money into existence to pay our bills and just have this everlasting, ever-growing debt known as the national debt. But his solution was basically allow the federal government to just print money like they do now without making the interest attached to it. So no more bonds being printed by the Treasury, you know, because right now if we borrowed $10 billion, we just took a $10 billion basically Treasury bond, or bunches of bonds that equal $10 billion, same thing, that we've sold off to someone for the cash now, and then we make them interest payments over the life of that 30-year, whatever, 40-year bond. So the solution is print bond-free, interest-free money that never has to be paid back because there's no one to pay it back to. We just printed it and used it. And one of the key things you have to have in order for this to make sense and work is a country that has everything that it needs, to where you don't have to go to some other country and say, hey, we need this from you. In order for us to survive here, we've got to make a trade agreement, and then that also means we have to value your currency, you have to value ours, vice versa. We've got to figure out who whose currency is worth what, who's worth more, who's printing less. All that goes away. There's no need for it. Because each country could do this, print their own money for their own bills. So every sheriff's office, every county government, every state government, the federal government, wildlife, fish and game services, you name it, everything would be paid for by this printing press because there's no one to pay back. It just prints the money it needs to do business, and that's it. Bottom line. Every federal or state or local government employees would be paid via the printing press. There would never be a such thing as we've got shortages, or you go to the driver's license office where, oh my God, I've been here for 2 hours trying to get in here. They would have so many employees there that they paid for. Again, it's basically free because they're printing the money out of nothing, not having to pay it back. You'd have a ton of people down there. At the same time, yes, you'd still have to go renew your license, but it wouldn't cost you a thing. It would be free. Our country, everything would be paid for. So it amazes me that we've gone from horses and buggies to automobiles that use gas, that use electronics, computers in them. We've gone from, 20, 30 mile an hour horses to cars that go well over 100 mile an hour. I mean, they carry 4 people. You have climate control inside the vehicle, also known as air conditioning. I mean, heat. You got hot air, you got cold air, you got a radio that picks up these radio waves that you can't see. You can listen to music or talk radio or anything you want. You can bring your own with you if you don't like what's being played, and play it in your own device, your own radio, stereo. Right? The medical field, in science, in mathematics, in physics, all of it has grown leaps and bounds over the last, let's just say, 120, 130 years. We've gone from not ever thinking man would be able to fly in the sky to flying in airplanes, now jet engines, that's been upgraded, to then rocket systems, or space shuttle, etc., going into outer space with a man inside, multiple men and women inside, and then landing back on the Earth in that same time period I just told you. You want to talk about growing leaps and bounds? Oh my God. Everything that you look at and see, oh my God, it actually has grown by leaps and bounds. We don't build houses out of just pure wood now. We make them out of concrete, brick, and block, and man, right? You name it. Electricity to the house. You could watch this thing called TV. You could get on this thing called a computer that's attached to the World Wide Web, where all knowledge is on there for you to tap into if you want to. But we have a monetary system that is absolutely ancient, where we borrow money into existence, enslave the entire population in order to pay back that money, to where a breaking point occurs when they cannot pay that money back, and all hell breaks loose. That's usually when revolutions start. Violent, bloody revolutions that are absolutely unnecessary, most of which throughout history are all related to the same principle of the money system. Fractional reserve lending with interest attached to every dollar that is printed. They never print the interest, they only print the principal, yet they attach the interest. So it is constantly trying to catch up and pay that back, and it cannot because the interest was never printed. It is a physical impossibility, a mathematical impossibility to ever pay it back. So the bottom line is, even if I could contact my congressman and have them all standing in front of me listening to me, and I tell them this idea and explain what I just explained to you, to where they're thinking about all these things I just said, and they're like, he's right, man, all this change we've gone through, we have advanced as a society, as a whole world, wow, he's right. But yeah, the financial system, it's relatively the same. Sure, it advanced, we've got credit cards that you could swipe, but it's the same principle. It's the same interest attached, debt, etc. You got to pay it back, and the biggest one you got to pay back is your country's debt, which can't be paid back because, as the guy just said, the principal's only printed, not the interest. And I tell myself every time I think about this, would I stand up and say that to them, to tell them to change their ways urgently so we don't have to repeat history? And I see these people, like this congressman of my own down the way here in Florida, won't even respond to me because he knows that I know what they've just done. And very few people have probably even contacted them. Probably none, except for me. this particular guy, this congressman, and he's going to see that and say, probably what he's going to say is, I never even read the bill. I just passed it like we always do. What is he saying? Let me just look real quick at what the bill said and what the former regulations that were in place did. Okay, he's right. Yeah. Yep, this young man Joe contacted me, and he's actually right. And I voted for it. Oh well. That's probably his response. I got a campaign contribution for voting for this. So, I'm fine. I'm whatever. This one little bill's not gonna hurt everybody like this guy probably thinks. When in fact, it now allows foreign banks to be bailed out again if they get involved in risky derivatives, which our banks were involved in 2008, that they said you cannot do after Dodd-Frank Act was passed if you expect any kind of help in the future. Now that's been removed. Now you can get help in the future if you get back into those same risky derivatives, the exact ones that were prohibited in Dodd-Frank, and we will include your pals across all foreign seas, foreign lands, and if they need bailout, we'll bail them out too. Is it possible that that was passed because the Federal Reserve said, look, we're already bailing these guys out behind the scenes, and we're kind of sort of breaking the law. We need to be able to do that unless you guys want a financial collapse like tomorrow. And of course it's a lie. But then Congress says, oh God, yeah, we don't want that. Okay, let's pass this law. Which would also make that congressman, no way in hell would he be able to tell little old citizen Joe, Jason at 4, the real reason I had to pass this was because we are being held hostage by the Federal Reserve. He would just choose to not respond. But it's more likely than not likely, that he just passed this bill without reading it, without caring, just, hey, we're passing this, okay, good deal, see you later, see you tomorrow, like they always do. So do you think I really would want to go to these people and say, hey, here's how to fix this problem, with those kind of people, with that mentality, and let them run the country continuously with this new system where they can print money with no interest attached, which is good, but their same principles, the same payouts, because they still have to have campaign contributions. They still got to have that in order for themselves to get back in office, which would mean more campaign contributions would come to them, just like they are now, for them to vote for this or not vote for that, so that these corporations get their way. The military-industrial complex would get its way, and then would also see, oh my God, we have unlimited funds now we can tap from the American government. The military-industrial complex would. And the pharmaceutical industry would. We can now sell them all these vaccines, and they'll just pay for it. They no longer have to even worry about what it's going to cost. We will become absolutely filthy rich beyond our imagination. So will the military-industrial complex, because we'll take our money, their own money, pay off the politician campaign contributions, get some bills passed into law. Now they've got all this monopoly on all military aspects of our life. Company after company making billions and billions of dollars because the government is just printing it out of nothing without having to pay it back. That could be a recipe for disaster, because they're always going to have a new enemy, right? There still has to be an enemy, because we can't just justify spending all this money, even though it costs us nothing, to build this massive military, privatized military system up when there's not really any enemy. So that would still have to continue. So, long story short, I would not opt to do that now. The prime time for someone to stand up and implement this that I've just talked about would be after the revolution has been won by the people and we are currently fixing everything that happened. That will be the prime time to implement this, and not a second too early. Take care.